All right, welcome to the Snyder Report podcast. I am your host, Gary Snyder. Before we get to our guest, which if you can't figure it out by now, you can see him sitting right next to me. But before we get to our next guest, we do need to thank our sponsors today, Robin Winston. Robin has been a great sponsor of the newsletter from the start. He was there when we sent the first one out 5 years ago with 147 subscribers. We are now at over 100,000 daily. So thank you, Robin Winston, and helped launch the podcast. And just to, in the short time we've been on, we hit 50,000 views yesterday. So thank you. And as always, hit the little subscribe button down at the bottom. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like there and tell us in the comment section how much you like it. And also, we need to thank our other sponsor right now, former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Her newest book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America, is out. You can get that anywhere you buy your books, unless you buy them at like the thrift store or something. Goodwill, they probably don't have it there yet. But anyway, our guest today is State Representative Alex Burton. Alex, welcome to the Snyder Report podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be in here.
Well, and I first want to thank you. You were a proud sponsor of our newsletter for a while last year, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Now, before we get going here, you have an op-ed coming out. We'll have that in the news. We'll also have that in the newsletter. But, this is your first session. You were just elected last year. This is your first session down in Indianapolis, up in Indianapolis for you, because I am in the opposite corner of the state. But take a few minutes here and reflect on your first introduction to the General Assembly and how you think it's going for you and maybe what you've learned and what you don't like about it.
Sure. This is first session. I have the pleasure of serving on Utilities, Family and Children, Judiciary, and Natural Resources Committee, Family and Children Committee. And I have had an absolute grand opportunity of just learning of all the things and how this place works. I was previously served on City Council, was there 5 years, but I equate this opportunity to being going from fifth grade to high school, simply because there's so many nuances that exist in long-standing relationships and long-standing issues that have yet to be resolved, all happening at the same time. But the fact of the matter is, this is the place where business is handled and conducted on the behalf of the state, and right, wrong, or indifferent, the reality of serving in the superminority certainly plays a role in my experience. But in each committee, I've had the opportunity and feel like I've weighed in on a lot of the critical issues facing the state. And I'm looking forward to coming back next year, building on my experiences this year to really continue to push the charge for better policy that's good for the majority of Hoosiers.
You mentioned being in the super minority. How has that affected the way you approach being a legislator?
Yeah, for me, the other side owns all the issues that we have right now and their inefficiencies as it relates to them being solved. You talk about a budget with a $1 billion plus deficit. That makes it hard to do business in the state. But then also, you take into account that from December to now, the state has lost $800 million. That's problematic, and there was a new leader of the federal government that is largely responsible for it. And you think of that $800 million loss, that could have gone to improve affordable housing, address infrastructure throughout the state, done so much good, but it didn't. And we're globally in this tariff war, if you will. And frankly, Indiana loses. We're the third largest exporter to China, and is largely responsible for what we've lost. We have to do better as a state, and the sooner that all Hoosiers realize that the one party that's not the Democrats is to blame for it, the better off we'll be.
When you take a look at what's happened in Indianapolis over the last 15 years where they have had a supermajority, I equate it to they broke it and now they're trying to offer solutions for something they broke. And it's not even a solution that will fix what they broke to begin with.
Exactly. And that's I mean, I said it in the op-ed, but could you imagine if roles were reversed and Democrats were responsible for a budget shortfall, but then still trying to provide universal education for public and charter schools? This is going to have a lasting impact. It's not just about urban, suburban, or rural. It's all the above. Everyone's going to have uh, be impacted negatively by this, and certainly local governments going to feel the squeeze. And it's going to be local governments left to make some very tough decisions by the fact that us here in the state legislature have really made it hard for them.
Your op-ed that's out, we cannot tax our way to prosperity. In my background here, you can see my kitchen table. We do this in front of the kitchen table or at the kitchen table, because I don't have money for a studio. But second, it drives home the point that this kitchen table right here is where Hoosiers are making decisions about everyday life. And they are decisions that Republicans from the president on down to the General Assembly are making it as difficult as possible to come to decisions at tables just like this to make ends meet every day. And your op-ed kind of drives that home, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean that is the point that I really sought to make. We have to get beyond this polarizing, just pointing the fingers. Like right now, there are families, too many families, struggling on the basic things. I was intentional about talking about local government, intentional in talking about immigration, and intentional in talking about a pre-K through 12 system that has to work. We're at a time where it's clear that less students are going to go to college. They're going to go into the workforce. It's already seen Hoosiers are working longer hours, and it has a lot to do with the immigration policies that we've tried to implement and scare people away. We need to get back to focusing on the things that matter, and Hoosier families deserve that. And it's not for the ultra wealthy, it's for every Hoosier. It's about those who are barely making ends meet to those who have seemingly done everything they're supposed to and still finding themselves in a tight spot. We have to address those issues right now. And unfortunately, that's not the narrative that is being shaped, whether it's here in Indianapolis or in Washington, D.C. And that's the point that I'm going to continue to make is we have to make sure that we're focusing on the majority of people and not a slim number of people who would be fine even if certain legislation wasn't passed.
You mentioned the property tax cut because that gives up to $300, and you're only going to get that $300 if you're one of the wealthiest homeowners in the state. Most
That's right.
most people aren't going to get that $300, but they are going to get a tax increase at the local level. If you don't own a home, if you're renting, if your home isn't one of the wealthiest homes in the state, you're going to end up getting a tax increase out of this. And the governor called for or the lieutenant governor called for the governor to veto it. He did not. But he didn't call for him to veto it because he thought it was bad. He called to veto because he thought it wasn't enough. It wasn't 1,300 or 2,300, and put even more of the responsibility of the tax burden back on working class families. Talk a little bit about that. You were a city councilman in Evansville. Talk about that and how this property tax cut and this budget shortfall, which is reaching almost $2 billion, affects working Hoosiers and localities that are going to have to recoup that money off the backs of working class families.
Yeah, frankly, with because of this bill, our communities are going to be less safe and law enforcement is going to be even more strained, already overworked, overburdened. And here we are trying to have them do even more with less. And that should absolutely not be the direction that we go. We cannot, as a state, reach prosperity, as I mentioned, going after small wins and claiming that they're big. That will not be uh, that will not get us anywhere. And then for the local governments, they're already making do with what they have, being very intentional in what they want to invest in. But now this makes it a whole lot more difficult. I was just sharing with someone earlier today about that. A fire truck in 2025 is going to be about $1.5 million, and the wait time it could be anywhere from 1.5 to 3 years in order to get that fire truck. That puts strain, right? We talk about making sure that our communities are safe and thriving and doing all these things, but if our communities can't even take care of themselves, then what are we really doing? And it really puts everyone in every community in a worse place off, not having local government being as efficient as possible.
And they do this with the purchase of two luxury SUVs in the background, $180,000 helipad being built at the governor's residence. And you can go down the line with just the irony dripping off of what's happening. Any response to that?
Yeah, we're the eye is not on the eye is not on the ball coming at us. We should be in a situation where we're all working together to solve the problems that are facing, again, majority of Hoosiers, and we're not. You talk about the vouchers that are making it the universal voucher program that is catering to the rich. And then, they're buying these luxury vehicles because they want to fit in with their rich friends. All these things are happening, and the average Hoosier is the one that is suffering the most, working longer hours, less money on a paycheck, higher property taxes, or higher taxes in general, because let's be real, everyone does not own a home. And those who are renting are really left to fend for themselves with no with very little policy actions protecting them as renters. And so all these things are stacking up against Hoosiers that is really unfortunate. But it's also the reason why I wrote the op-ed, trying to drive the point home that we have to do more for the average Hoosier. And the longer we wait, the longer our economy, the longer we as just a whole are going to struggle.
Before we let you go, you see the kitchen table right here. People are sitting around it every night, deciding, am I getting my prescription drugs? Are we going to eat? Are we going to pay our electric bill? Offer them some type of optimism that you see, or is there any form at all right now?
Yeah, I think we have to drive the point home that what's happening right now in Indianapolis should not be the norm. And there are at least 20, 30 of us who are working to solve the problem and really getting the message out. And when I say that at least 30, that's 30 in the House, and I'm going to go ahead and add the 10 in the Senate. We together are driven because we know that we're standing on the right side of things right now. And our aim is to, once this session is over with, we're going to continue driving the point home. Unfortunately, it's going to get dark before the sun comes out again, but we're going to make progress, and we're going to drive this message home, and we're going to do all that we can to make sure that Democrats everywhere are paying attention, and people everywhere, because let's face it, there are more than just Democrats who are going to be negatively impacted by all of this harmful legislation that's coming out of Indianapolis. And so we're going to have to message it out the right way. And then come 2026, we're going to pick up some seats, and we're going to do what we can, and we're really going to get back to doing what's best for Hoosiers and putting our values at the forefront to change what's happening here in the state for the past 20 years, going back to a direction that makes sense for everyone.
Well, you guys are doing God's work down there, and I'm serious about that. And while, they may not listen to you, you may not be heard inside the halls of the Indiana General Assembly. We're making sure that you guys are heard out here at kitchen tables just like this, and to make sure that your voices are being heard and knowing that there is a light at the end of that tunnel. Before we let you go, though, Alex, I do need to thank our sponsors again. We need to thank Robin Winston, a great sponsor of the podcast and the newsletter goes out to 100,000 plus every single day across the state. If you need to get the Snide report, just let us know. Send us a message or a comment at the bottom of this. If you subscribe to our channel, we're going to give you a free VIP subscription. And also, if you're watching this, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you leave us a comment. Tell us how we're doing. And, even if it's to offer Representative Burton here some words of encouragement. And we also need to thank our other sponsor of the podcast. I lost it. There we go. You think I'd be more organized. Former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson, her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America. Get that anywhere books are sold. Any closing thoughts, Representative Burton?
Thanks so much for having me on here. This is very much top of mind for me as we're coming to the end of this legislative session, but even beyond, there's a lot of work to do, and I'm confident that we, the Democrats in the state legislature, are going to continue to fight the good fight and do what we need to make sure that Hoosiers are protected.
I'm Gary Snyder. He's not. He is Representative Alex Burton. This is the Snide Report, and we are out.